Hey, Becca.
Hi, Mom.
Thanks for being willing to have this conversation for me and for my friend who's putting together this event.
Yeah, happy to.
Not a problem. Um, so, the whole idea is courageous conversations about race, intergenerational conversations. And we were asked to talk about experiences of racism, where we've learned about it, where we've seen it, things like that. Um, and I know I've had a few experiences where it kind of shifted perspective for me. One of them was
hmm
when you were in elementary school and I was dating a black man and we were going shopping. And I think we were getting you new shoes or something. And we were sitting down in the aisle and trying them on. And all of a sudden, I noticed that the salespeople were really hovering.
hmm
And I'd never really had that experience before. And I'm like, okay, no, we're fine, we're fine. And then somebody kept coming over every few seconds. Um, and I'd never quite had that experience before. And then after the fact, I realized it had to do with the fact it wasn't just a white mother and her daughter shopping, it
hmm
was a multiracial family shopping. Um,
Uh,
and it just kind of blew my mind in a way that it probably shouldn't have. And before then, it had been like this academic or this professional exercise, this thing I learned about or this thing I did professionally. And all of a sudden, it hit me a
hmm
lot more that wait a second, now this is a real thing that is happening every day that I knew about here, and I had to process a whole lot differently all of a
Yeah.
sudden. I don't know if you remember that day at all.
No, I don't. But yeah, I can see how that would be a really surprising experience.
Mm-hmm. You might have been a little bit too young to have a lot of memory of that sort of thing.
hmm
So, do you have any experiences where you became more aware of racism or circulating either in your friend group or you directly witnessed it happening?
Yeah, my high school was predominantly white, like so much so that it was surprising to see anyone of color at all. And I did this tutoring program when I was a junior and senior in high school, where we were paired with a freshman who had been identified by the administration as someone who had had a tough time in middle school, and they wanted to make sure they made a good transition to high school. So one of my favorite mentees was a freshman girl who happened to be black, which was, definitely different than most of the kids who were in that little tutoring group. So, some things I remember about uh, helping her with things is that when there were substitute teachers, and she would ask to like go to her locker to go grab some supplies, they would wait way longer to let her go than any of the other white kids in the group. And there was always a problem with teachers not believing her or her not being able to make friends very easily because people at the school were scared of trying to be friends with someone who was different than the main group. And I'm still in contact with her now, and she still tells me sometimes how difficult it can be to be a person of color in a predominantly white school.
Do you remember what sort of impact that had on you at the time?
I really so really all the other kids that I had helped tutor had been white kids, mostly white girls, and it it hasn't really hit me how much more difficult things were for her, right? Obviously all of these kids had their special challenges that I was helping them with, but there were things that were outside of my control, right? So things that I couldn't help with because of just the way that the school, like the whole atmosphere of the school was, there were parts of her life that I couldn't help with because of how she was treated because of her race.
Anything else you want to say about that, or about things you've witnessed since then, or how that's affected you since then?
I think something that really did for me was kind of open my eyes to how people who are in theory having the same struggles or in the same circumstance, it can have a different impact on you based on how people perceive you. Right? There were things that some of the white kids who needed help in our little tutoring group could ask for, that if she had asked for them, would definitely have just been denied flat out. And there were experiences of hers that got invalidated a lot because people didn't want to believe that things were different for her.
Right. I can definitely identify with that. I had a situation within the last year or so where there was a committee member who came late into a committee meeting, and she was all upset. And we stopped what we were doing to listen to her and her experience. Well, what had happened is she had been stopped by the police on her way through this very white suburb to come to the meeting, and she was explaining where she was going, what she was doing there, and all these sorts of things, and she had to justify her presence. And she was so upset. It absolutely messed with her day. She was fearful for what was going to happen, justifiably. And we couldn't get to the business we wanted to get to. And that's her daily life, that she has to be able to adapt to those sorts of things and be able to keep going, and the sort of resilience that requires. That's just a level up on
has to be so exhausting.
Yeah. I really appreciate your willingness to talk through these things with me. I know this isn't a conversation that I got into growing up, but I think it's really important to be able to talk about race and racism, and especially when we're white folks and we might have the opportunity to walk around in our lives and not say anything, not notice anything. And I know it's only a few minutes, but maybe it'll help some other people have some conversations.
Yeah, I really hope so. It's an important thing to talk about.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Becca.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bye, hon.